Alright, so this is for the subject investment and portfolio management. So this is an article from Investopedia.com. Particular topic for this video is portfolio management. Okay, so we have already, have an understanding of what an investment is. And ito naman dito, ano ba yung importance? Why do we need to create a portfolio of investments? Okay. Di ba nabanggit natin yung investments, there are certain risks na kakibat pag mag-invest ka. There's a possibility you could lose your money, and also there's a possibility that you can earn from your investment. Okay. Yung portfolio, it's essentially a collection of investments. And what you do is, the reason why you're creating a portfolio is so that the different investments that you're going to put into that portfolio would be able to kind of, ang tawag doon, i-even out niya yung risk na meron yung mga investments mo. Okay, so essentially, yung portfolio, you have higher risk investments, and then you have your moderate risk investments, and you also have low risk investments in a portfolio. Kumbaga, parang you're trying to balance out the risk by having different types of investments in that portfolio. Okay? And then another thing, hindi lang basta yung risk, ang consideration when creating a portfolio. Okay, another thing that you must consider is, of course, you have your different investments, have to make sure that they are from different industries, to make sure na kapag merong, particular event or particular situation na mangyayari, the investments would, react differently. Okay? Hindi yung pare-pareho silang bagsak kapag nagkaroon ng, let's say, pandemic. Pag nagkaroon ng pandemic, lahat ba sila babagsak? Or would some of them survive the pandemic, or some of them would thrive during the pandemic? And then, of course, you have some that would perform really low during the pandemic. Okay? So, kapag pipili ka ng investments na ilalagay mo sa isang portfolio, you have to make sure that they come from different industries. And then, yung mga industries na yon, they would react differently given a particular situation. Okay? Although, bibihira naman yung bibihira naman yung mga, situations na ganito, pandemic, yung ngayon lang after so many years, so many decades, ngayon lang ulit nagkaroon ng pandemic, diba? So, ayan. And then, another thing is, I think, financial crisis, and I have your 2008. Before 2008, I think, meron din ng 2002, 1997, and then, medyo malayo na yung sinundan na yun. Okay, but, during a financial crisis, even though karamihan ng companies, syempre bagsak kapag merong financial crisis, but still merong types of companies in particular industries na they would still be able to survive a financial crisis. And normally, yung mga companies na yan ay yung mga nagde-deal with the basic necessities ng mga tao. Kasi, may financial crisis or wala, kakain ng tao, diba? Mga kailangan ng yung mga basic necessities normally, ang mga nagsusurvive ng kahit na anong situation. Alright? But for other industries, especially yung kapag ang clientele nila ay yung medyo, what do you call that? Average households or upper class households. So, yun. Medyo sila yung nagigipit kapag nagkakaroon ng financial crisis, nagkakaroon ng pandemic. Alright? For example, diba, airlines, hotel and restaurants, ganyan. Okay? So, ayan. It's another consideration when creating a portfolio. Tapos, last consideration would be, anong type of investor ka ba? Okay? Nabanggit ko nga, meron tayong tinatawag na risk assessment. Before i-allow, diba, we have financial institutions, and then they offer investment products to their clientele. And before they offer those products to the clientele, meron silang pinapasagutan na questionnaire. They call it the risk assessment or risk appetite profile or something like that. Na inaalam kung yung isang tao ay conservative investor ba siya, moderate investor ba siya, or aggressive investor. Okay? Kasi depending on the type of risk appetite that you have, merong isasuggest sa'yo kung anong types of instruments lang ang pwede mong pag-investan. Okay? So, yun kasi, yung tinatawag natin na risk appetite is, kumbaga, kaya mo pa bang, hindi, kumbaga ay, tawag dito, if you're going to lose this money, is it alright with you, or hindi ka na ba makakatulog, or, tawag dito, would it be troublesome for you, or would it be disturbing you kapag, tawag dito, nakain ng losses itong pera na i-invest mo, okay? So, in that sense, yun, magkakaalaman. And depending on that, yun nga, merong i-suggest sa'yo or recommend sa'yo kung anong types of investments lang ang pwede mong kunin. Normally, kapag conservative investor ka, ibig sabihin ng conservative investor, as much as possible, ayaw mong maging loss yung investment mo. You'd like it to earn money. Kahit maliit lang, okay lang na maliit as long as hindi siya negative or hindi siya magkakaroon ng losses. So, in that sense, for conservative investors, ang normally na sinasuggest na investment type is bonds. Kasi, especially government bonds, kasi it's very, it's quite safe and risk-free. Kasi kapag government, di ba, nag-issue ng instrument, government is being funded by, the taxes of the people. So, in a way, medyo, kumbaga guaranteed na babayaran naman ng government yung interest on the bonds or on the government instruments. Okay? So, ayun. Normally, kapag conservative bonds, and of course, pagdating sa bonds, pinaka-safe, you have your government bonds. After that, you have your corporate bonds, especially from, established corporations. Yun, di po matagal na yung history nila, and over the years is very profitable naman yung kanilang performance. Okay? So, in that sense, yun yung isasuggest sa'yo na investment types kapag ikaw ay conservative investor. Okay? And then you have, on the other extreme, you have your aggressive investor. Itong investor na to, high risk, high return ang gusto. Okay lang sa kanya na, kumbaga, kahit ilagay mo yan sa type of investments kung saan malaki yung possibility na magkakalos siya or malaki yung possibility na malaki yung magiging loss niya, as long as andun din yung possibility na malaki din yung kikitain niya. Kasi normally, di ba, high risk, high return is okay lang sa kanya. Okay? Makakatulog pa rin siya kahit yun ay mag-negative, kahit makita niya na halos mga lahati na yung kanyang investment, okay lang sa kanya. Okay? Kumbaga, kaya niyang sikmurain yung ganong situation. And it would not bother him. Hindi po makakatulog pa rin siya ng maayos sa gabi. Okay? So, in that sense, you're an aggressive investor. And kapag aggressive investor, normally, ang suited na financial instrument or financial security sa kanya ay stocks. Okay? Kasi nga yung stocks, di ba, nakadepende sa paggalaw ng market price. And yung paggalaw ng market price, nakadepend on maraming factors, di ba? Galaw ng competitors, sariling activities ng company, mga plans nila, mga pagre-release nila ng panibagong products, yung pagre-report nila ng kung magkano kinita nila this quarter or in the last quarter, ganyan. So, yan, medyo maraming factors ang nakaka-affect dun sa paggalaw ng market price ng stocks. Okay? So, in a way, yes, high risk, high return ang stocks na compare mo lang naman sa bonds. Kasi normally, yung dalawa lang naman ang pagpipilian mo. Okay? Tapos, meron tayong sa gitna, yung moderate investor natin. Nasa pagitan siya ng conservative and aggressive. Okay? So, in a way, half-half. So, normally, kapag magsasuggest ka sa kanya ng investment type, edi, kalahati din. Kalahati na bonds, kalahati na stocks. Okay? Mixed type of investments. Okay? Although, pwede din naman kasi na magkaroon ka ng portfolio na puro bonds lang, kung conservative investor ka. Yung portfolio mo, bonds yung laman niya. Pero yung bonds na yon from different sources. You have your government bonds, you have your corporate bonds, ganyan. Okay? In a way, that's also a portfolio pa din naman. And then, if you're a moderate investor, edi yung portfolio mo, you have, bonds, and you have your stocks. Tapos, of course, yung sources ng mga yon, edi from different companies And then yung different companies na yun is from different industries. Okay? And then you have your aggressive investor, probably karamihan ng investments niya from stocks ng companies lang, ano. And then, of course, that's his portfolio. Tapos, it came from different companies across different industries, and that's his portfolio. Okay, so ayun na. Different types of portfolio, depending on your risk appetite and the type of investments that would be suggested to you by your fund manager or financial advisor. Okay, but moving to this article, yun yung ano lang, introduction. Portfolio management is the art and science of selecting and overseeing a group of investments that meet the long-term financial objectives and risk tolerance. Ayan, kaya nga, tawag dito, ina-assess yung risk appetite ng isang investor of the client, the company, or an institution. Okay, so yung investor naman kasi pwedeng individual, pwedeng company, diba? Or pwedeng institution. Portfolio management involves building and overseeing a selection of investments that will meet the long-term financial goals and risk tolerance of an investor. Okay? With regards to, long-term financial goals, kasi dun sa questionnaire, meron din dong isang question na how much do you want to, build during a particular period. So, let's say 1 million within 10 years or something like that. So, ayan. Depending on that then, pwedeng, kasi kunwari, moderate investor ka, pero pwedeng, if you have that kind of long-term financial goal, so the financial advisor could suggest na, sige, gawin mo na pong, karamihan ay stocks din. Although moderate investor ka, right? But, because meron kang ganong particular goal in mind, so, in a way, you have to, kumbaga push into the aggressive type of investments. But again, before before naman yun i-implement, meron akong dapat understanding, na kasi moderate investor yung risk assessment mo, but they're going to push through with the aggressive type of investment or risky type of investment. So, kailangan i-explain yun ng maayos sa'yo ng fund manager mo. Kasi nga, hindi magka-jive, diba, yung type of investor sa type of investment. Okay, but it could be customized din naman, kasi nga, if you're going to consider itong financial goal ng investor. Kasi kung moderate, tapos half bonds, half stocks, kung pag kinompute kasi nila, baka hindi nyo po ma-reach itong goal nyo if this is just the type of investments that you're going for. Or pwede rin namang baguhin yung composition ng portfolio. Let's say 25% na bonds, tapos gawin po nating 75% yung stocks. Okay? So pwede rin. Okay? Active portfolio management requires strategically buying and selling stocks and other assets in an effort to beat the broader market. Okay? So dalawa to, you have your active portfolio management, and then you have your passive portfolio management. Itong passive seeks to match the returns of the market by mimicking the makeup of a particular index or indexes. Sa Philippine Stock Exchange, we have the PSEI, Philippine Stock Exchange Index. Tapos yung index kasi, it's composed of, I think, 20 companies. Tapos you have your PSEI performance or index performance, kung magkano yung naging galaw ng index companies. Okay? And in a way, yun yung magiging parang benchmark mo. If your particular stocks na nandun sa portfolio mo are doing as well as the index, then you're doing good. If your portfolio is doing worse than the index, then there's something wrong with your portfolio. In a way, it could be an indication na meron dyan na a few companies that are not doing well. Yung performance nila is masyadong mababa compared to the index. So, normally kapag ganun yung situation, what you do is you switch out those types of investments and then you would choose another type of investments. Kumbaga papalitan mo yung mga low-performing investments. Yung mga mababang performance or in a way, let's say, naglo-loss na dun sa portfolio mo, pwede mo naman kasi siyang palitan ng investment. So, tanggalin mo siya, benta mo na siya, bili ka ng panibagong investment. So, syempre, before mo siya bilhin, tawag dito, you have to analyze it din naman. And then, of course, you can compare it against the index, the performance of the index, before you include it in your portfolio. Okay? So, in a way, kapag ganon, na merong changes kang ginagawa dun sa portfolio mo, it's a kind of active portfolio management. Ano? Although you're also using the indexes, itong passive portfolio management, pwede kasi na dun sa mismong PSEI ka na lang mag-invest. Ano? Yung tipong ayaw mo nang analyze on your own kung saan companies ko ba ilalagay yung pera ko. So, what you do is, kung ano yung mga companies na nandun sa PSEI, nasa index mismo, or yun na mismong index, dun ka na mismo mag-invest. Or, individually, you choose yung some of the companies that are in the index. So, in that sense, passive portfolio management siya kasi nga, pinili mo na lang yung index companies. So, tawag dito, more likely than not, hindi mo na siya babaguhin or hindi mo na papalitan yung mga companies na nandun. Kasi nga, yun na yung, index ng PSE. Alright. Understanding portfolio management, professional licensed portfolio managers work on behalf of clients. So, meron tayong mga ganyan na tinatawag. Fund managers, financial advisors, or portfolio managers. Ayan. While individuals may choose to build and manage their own portfolio. So, two ways. Either ikaw mismo yung mag-i-invest ng pera mo, ikaw mismo yung pipili ng mga companies, or you put it in an investment na merong manager or merong isang tao talaga na ina-assign yung financial institution to manage the funds. Okay? In either case, the portfolio manager's ultimate goal is to maximize the investment's expected return within an appropriate level of risk exposure. Okay? Yung iba nagda-doubt dito sa isang to. Diba yung, why would I allow someone else to to manage my money? Kasi, in a way, pwede mo naman itong pagkatiwalaan kasi sometimes their bonuses would depend on how the portfolio that they're managing has performed. Ano? So, kung hindi naging maayos yung pagmamanage nila, bagsak yung performance, hindi masyadong kumita yung fund, then they're not getting any bonus or they could get pero very small amount lang. Unlike kung inayos talaga nila yung pag-manage ng portfolio, nag-perform na maayos, limpak-limpak yung kinita ng portfolio. So, kumbaga, it's a win-win situation for the investors saka dun sa fund manager mismo or dun sa portfolio manager din. So, anyway, yes, pwede mong pagkatiwalaan unless you can prove na hindi talaga mapagkakatiwalaan yung portfolio manager. There are instances, syempre, tao lang din naman yan, nawawala ng motivation. But still, for the most part, karamihan naman ng portfolio managers ay maayos ang management of the portfolios. And portfolio management requires the ability to weigh strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats. So parang SWOT lang, across the full spectrum of investments. The choices involve trade-offs from debt versus equity to domestic versus international and growth versus safety. Ayan. So ito yung mga trade-offs, You have your debt versus equity kasi sometimes, depending on the economic situation of a country, so sometimes much, more attractive ang debt or other times, nagiging more attractive ang equity. Okay? And then you have your domestic versus international. Saan ba mas magandang i-invest yung pera? To domestic companies ba? Again, it would depend on the economic situation of the company. Kasi kung restrictive currently yung economy and hindi masyado nagpe-perform ng maayos yung mga domestic corporations, then it might be more, beneficial if the fund is invested in international companies. Lalo na kung walang masyadong restrictions in the international economy. Okay? And then you have your growth versus safety. It would depend on the risk tolerance. Kasi nga, low risk, low return, high risk, high return. So, kapag yung investor would rather, be safe, edi, syempre, dun ka pupunta sa aling investment yung much safer at this point in time. And then, if growth naman yung habol ng investor, edi aling type of investment ang makakapag-provide probably ng mas mataas na profit. Okay, so in that case, edi high risk ang hinahanap dito. Okay? Portfolio management, so could either be passive or active. Kapag passive, yung tipong binili mo na lang siya, tapos, yun na, kalimutan mo na lang siya, balikan mo na lang siya after 5 years or after 10 years. Okay? And then, itong active naman, you monitor it regularly, tapos, chine-check mo yung performance ng bawat instrument. And if one of them is not performing well, edi, you actively replace it with something else. And then if they're performing well, and then you keep them in the portfolio. Okay? So, yan. Tapos merong mga other strategies pa silang ginagamit. Pero for the most part, edi yung technical analysis. Especially for short-term traders, yung technical analysis talaga ang madalas gamitin. Okay? Key elements of portfolio management, you have your asset allocation. So, yan. Asset allocation or the type of investment. Okay? Pwede siyang mix of assets kasi. Sorry. For example, stocks and bonds, and yung normal, and then you also have cash or certificates of deposits, or dito sa Pilipinas, they have your time deposit. Okay? Tapos there are others often referred to as alternative investments. Example nito, yung real estate, commodities, jewelries, arts or antiques, and then you have your derivatives and mga contracts, tawag dito, futures or forward contracts. Okay? Asset allocation is based on understanding that different types of assets do not move in concert. Okay? Kumbaga, pag mayroong particular situation, hindi sila lahat ay profitable, hindi sila lahat ay mag-move up, yung value. Some would go up, some would move down, and that's what you want in your portfolio to happen. Hindi yung kasi it's good if they're all going up. Pero what if it's the opposite and they're all going down? So, that's what you want to avoid. That's why yung portfolio kailangan ay, in a way, balance. Merong mga investments doon na pataas, others are going down, or kabaliktad. Okay? So, yan. Yung decision on the asset allocation, different types of assets. So, that's one of the considerations mo ngayon. Okay? How much would you put in stocks? How much would you put in bonds? Gusto mo bang maghawak din ng time deposit? Or gusto mo bang maglagay ng pera in real estate, in commodities, or in derivatives, or other types of investments? So, di ba, you have your mga cryptocurrency na ngayon, you have your NFTs. So, we'll discuss those types of investments later on. Mix of assets provides balance and protects against risk. Kaya pagpasensya lang yun na ang ating pagbatok. Investors with a more aggressive profile weight their portfolios toward more volatile investments such as growth stocks. Okay? Pag aggressive investors, normally, they prefer high-risk investment. So, growth stocks talaga. Investors with a conservative profile, conservative investors, weight their portfolios towards stabler investments or yung mga stable types of investments kagaya ng bonds and blue chip stocks. Okay, yung blue chip stocks na tinatawag, ito yung mga companies na centuries old na, na until now ay established pa rin and performing well. Okay, kilala ng tao, di ba? Blue chip stocks. Diversification, the only certainty in investing is that it is impossible to consistently predict winners and losers. So, hindi mo alam kung alin na magpa-perform ng maayos. Or, in a way, you could, project or predict. Pero, there are certain situations wherein you cannot exactly predict how they're going to respond to a particular economic situation. Okay? So, yung prudent approach is to create a basket of investments or portfolio that provides broad exposure within an asset class. Okay, so again, kapag pipili ka nga ng portfolio or you're going to pick out investments for your portfolio, mas maganda na magkakaiba sila. Different companies, different industries. Diversification is spreading risk and reward within an asset class because it is difficult to know which subset of an asset class or sector is likely to outperform another. So in diversification, it seeks to capture the returns of all the sectors over time while reducing volatility at any given time. Okay. So kumbaga ino-offset, you have your risky assets and then you have your less risky assets. So yung kumbaga yung projected na kanilang performance would offset each other. Real diversification is made across various classes of securities. Okay, you have your bonds, you have your stocks, you have your, let's say, real estate, and you have your derivatives, other types of investments, tapos, nakaspread into different companies from different industries then. So yan. Classes of securities, sectors of the economy, and geographical regions. So you have your domestic, you have your international as well. Rebalancing used to return a portfolio to its original target allocation at regular intervals, usually annually. Okay? Kumbaga, minomonitor mo yung portfolio mo, tapos, let's say, yun nga, meron kang investments na nag-perform ng maayos, so syempre yung value niya is tumaas, diba? And then you have your others na lumiit yung value. But at the end of a certain period, or bahala ka na kung anong period ang gusto mo, is it annually during, let's say, every March or every June or every September, ganyan. And then what you want to do is that during that particular period, ibabalik mo dun sa original asset mix mo. So yung, let's say, 20% bonds, 20% stocks, 20% ay sa real estate, 20% in, other investments, right? But since performance nila during the last year, it's possible na lumobo, let's say, yung total value ng yung stocks, naging, out of the total mix, naging 30% siya, ganyan. So, yeah, you can do rebalancing every period, right? Active portfolio management, you actively monitor your portfolio, and then you try to replace those non-performing ones, and then you try to compare it with the index as well. Tapos, you try to, what do you call that? Yung parang hahabulin mo yung performance ng index, And then you have your passive portfolio management. Bilhin mo lang ngayon, different types of investments mo. Then, parang forget mo na siya for a few years. Tapos, babalikan mo na lang siya after some time, Ayan, but you can read the content nitong active and passive portfolio, right? Save your frequently asked questions, yung mga na-discuss na rin naman kanina. How does passive portfolio management differ from active, asset allocation, diversification, right? So, ayan lang for this one. So, again, portfolio management siya, and some of the considerations that you have, your type of, kung anong type of investor ka ba, the different types of investments available to you, alin yung suited sa type of investor. And then, of course, you have your composition ng portfolio. You have your consideration, asset allocation, saka diversification, and then you also have rebalancing on the component of your portfolio na kailangan ay magkakaiba ng risk, risk level, yung investments, tapos ay they should come from different companies from across different industries, tapos you have your mix din ng local ba siya or domestic, okay? And then, of course, you have your classes of assets, to buy stocks, bonds, real estate, derivatives, and, the other types of investments. All right? So that's it for this one. Thanks and bye.